What is going on, my broskies? My name is Toadski, back again, here to bring you guys yet another One Piece Treasure Cruise video. So the KIZUNA clash is finally here against Sabo and Koala, and of course during this event you'll be able to acquire those Super Evolution Skulls for Sabo and Koala. So let's go ahead and break down each of these teams. If you guys haven't seen my preparation video, we're just going to be showcasing the exact teams that I showcased in that video. So there's going to be two different teams per variation. This first one here is going to be using Strength Blackbeard, which came out during Global's anniversary like last year-ish, I think. And this unit is interesting because, like, to be honest, you just never ever need to use this character, but oddly enough, considering the conditions and what characters get cooldowns and stuff, Blackbeard just seems to be a really decent unit to be using in this content, mainly because having some type of character that can bypass defensive effects in their captain effect is going to be holding you in relatively good stead in this specific piece of content. And also with Blackbeard's EX Super or Super Class effect, being able to remove 6 turns of defense, and then using the support of Tashigi attached to Zoro to remove that 1 turn of extra defense, is a big deal, because if you remove all the defense or you reduce the defense, the enemy's going to switch out your captain to one of your crewmates, which is obviously not ideal at all. So by just removing the defense in the middle of the tap timing, we can basically avoid those gimmicks altogether, which makes things much easier. And then in terms of the other defensive effects like Rainbow Shield, Damage Nullification, Barrier, whatever it may be, not going to be a problem because Blackbeard just bypasses it, and this team actually does relatively decent damage, all things considered. So not a bad way to start things off, but of course doesn't give you as many tickets and points and stuff, mainly because you're not using the Dragon Friend Captain. So moving on to our second team against the quick variation, this one is of course going to be utilizing a full, like, a revolutionary army team up against the quick one with Dragon Friend Captain. So of course the team isn't 100% Rev Army, as we do have the Rare Recruit Viola, who does actually play a relatively important role in this team, being able to change the block slots on the final stage into Rainbow. So that's actually really clutch that this character is able to do that. And due to what occurs on stage 2, Dragon is just going to be the great unit to use here. And also, just with the way that the team kind of flows, you are relatively okay to go ahead and use the Robin and Koala switch effect and the special on this stage as well to give you additional damage output. Now, even though Dragon does reduce enemy defense, it doesn't reduce it completely. It's only an 80% reduction, so you do still have to have some kind of crazy damage increasing effect on your team in order to kind of break through. But still, Dragon does help a lot with the defense reduction. He does do the captain swapping, so even though we reduce the enemy's defense and then also Dragon removes that threshold, which is kind of important, the enemy's not going to react because we already have a captain swap active on our team. And then the EX Super, of course, gives us the conditional boost against the characters that are inflicted with defense down, so we definitely want to use it here because it's not going to be useful for us later on. And then we can switch Sabo into the captain spot, which is pretty cool, and we can switch it back to Robin Koala and stuff. Just the whole captain switch stuff is just really interesting. And then, of course, as I said, you can use Robin Koala stage 2 just to give you additional damage, just to ensure you get the knockout against Morley and Karasu here on stage 2. And then on the final stage, you basically just use everything. Make sure to use your Viola first before activating any other, or I guess you could use your Ivankov first, then use your Viola to ensure that you get the rainbow slots, and then you're not going to deal with any other really nasty orb change, because you want to basically have the rainbow slots so that you can basically ignore the enemy's damage reduction based effect based on your slots. And then because you have all of the Rev armies on your team, your Dragon, Ivankov, and Kuma allows your normal attacks to bypass enemy defensive effects. Moving on now to our int variation, and of course because of damage limiter being a thing in this content, Enma Zoro is going to be a really interesting character to use here, and I think that Bandai kind of knew the fact that people would actually kind of pivot into this scenario by using Enma Zoro, due to the fact that stage 2 of this content actually has 5 enemies. So that actually works out really well for Zoro, because Zoro wants to try and consume 10 Wano slots before you reach the final stage, so Hiyori is going to be a very pivotal key piece to this team. If you don't have Hiyori, I would say Enma Zoro is borderline unusable. I guess without the Hiyori, it really does make a major difference. So we want to consume 5 Wano slots on stage 1, and then we want to consume 5 Wano slots on stage 2. So we're going to be using Carrot and Wanda to deal with the 3 turns of special reverse. An absolutely phenomenal character, by the way. So by activating that with the support of the Mystems, we can get that damage reduction, which means that we're not going to be taking too much damage when we move into the final stage, which allows us to avoid the additional gimmicks on the final stage. Having some type of damage reduction on this stage is very important. And then of course Hiyori is going to give us the matching slots once again with Wano. We want to consume 5 Wano slots so that Enma Zoro is 100% ready to go. And then on the final stage, we can basically just launch everything, making sure that Enma Zoro does have his gauge activated, so it does double the damage limiter, which essentially allows you to kill the enemy in 1 turn, not having to worry about the stall over multiple turns, dealing with the additional gimmicks. Of course, the only real downside here is that we're not using Dragon, Ivankov, and Kuma as a friend captain to give us additional tickets in the KIZUNA. And then finally we have our last team, which is going to be the Dragon, Ivankov, and Kuma friend captain team against the int variation. So we don't actually have the 5 Rev Army characters on our team in order to facilitate the damage through defense effect that Dragon, Ivankov, and Kuma have in their captain effect. It's just not really needed for this one, so you can kind of build this one a bit more freely, mainly focusing on cerebrals. So we're using Robin and Koala as our dedicated captain to deal with the special reverse on stage 2, which does help out quite a lot. We're then going to have the support of 20th Anniversary Usopp, which changes badly matching slots into recovery when the enemy changes our slots around. So that works out perfectly for us because it essentially just gives us a full board of recovery slots. Relatively important that we have that, because once we get to the final stage, you actually do need to consume some of the recovery slots. When you get deeper into the content and you like get into deeper levels, there is going to be hunger, and dealing with that hunger is very annoying. So we actually are just going to try and consume some of these Wano slots once we get deeper into the content. Nami and Karina are really good to use here because Karina has damage threshold, so that we can basically tank the death hit of Bello Betty very comfortably without too many issues at all. Now, another thing with this team is that we want to save the Robin and Koala special for the revive, because the enemy will put up a barrier where you have to hit them with tandem slots, and because of the way that the team is kind of designed, and it's not, I guess you technically could use the Sabo EX Super, but there is eventually going to be damage reduction based attack boost, I think, based on your slots. I can't remember if it was this one or the next or the other boss. Either way, I guess you could use the Sabo EX Super to generate tandem slots to break the barrier, but we also are just going to be using the Robin and Koala special, removes 3 turns of barrier on the revive, which is really nice. Also, you know, again, when you get deeper into the content and you have like the hunger debuff, you want to make sure you do not use Sabo's EX Super 2 prematurely, because you actually need to consume recovery slots in order to break through, so do keep that in mind. But overall, that's going to wrap it up from me. Thank you so much for watching the video. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and if you did, make sure to go ahead and leave a like. And if you want to stay up to date with all the content I post, including more One Piece Treasure Cruise content, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. On that, guys, I'll see you guys within the next video.
お願い。